Yes, guys, welcome back to the Natural Muscle Podcast with your hosts, as always, Luke and Finn. In today's episode, we are going to cover the current scene of natural bodybuilding, particular with WMBF and a lot of like international shows. And to kick things off, we want to give a shout out to Dino. So I'll get the share screen up. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, just get this through now. So Dean, actually one of the UK lads, competed overseas at WMBF Malaysia, coming second in his class. Fantastic showing. I know it's one of his earlier shows as well. He's wanting to do like a couple of shows towards the latter end of the season. So still to obviously bring his condition in, as he's mentioned. But yeah, fantastic outing. And I believe the top two in both the classes, because they split it towards a lightweight and a heavyweight within this. So the top two of both of the classes battle it out in the overall. And I think there were two pro cards given out on the day, and I think just narrowly missing out on that. And to say this is one of the earlier shows as well for Dean, so fantastic look. Some huge improvements there, and I'm sure that we'll see more of Dean as the season progresses. But yeah, if we're going through obviously the state of like the WMBF in the UK, other federations in the UK, and then comparing it to like the WMBF shows overseas. Big difference in terms of like the production value and also like the prize money that is there to be had and like up for grabs really. So we just want to like take a big dive in towards that and yeah, share our thoughts on that really, Finn. So yeah, Finn, do you want to like kick things off in regards to that? Because I know you've had a deep dive through into some of the overseas WMBF shows and what's to be had there.
Yeah, so this episode we were trying to get some guests on, but ultimately couldn't get anyone this weekend. And then Dean doing this show kind of led us nicely into something we did want to talk about. And obviously, we're not just being like biased towards WMBF, but obviously this is the federation that's really expanding and putting more of these type shows on. And it's just every nation now, because only a couple of years ago there was only really the WMBF in the UK that really had like a European affiliation to the WMBF Worlds and things like that. I mean, I think maybe WMBF Spain, or they had the Spanish national championships, but even just probably 3 years ago there wasn't that many. And now pretty much every country in Europe, and I think they've probably got 200 plus affiliates. I'm sure it's some silly number like that where all these countries will have like a national open championships. And basically for most of them anyone can go. So as long as you've got, I think if you're a UK athlete, as Dean is, if you've had prior permission from Steph or someone at the WMBF UK, so you just talk to him. And Steph was actually at that show. She got invited over to be a judge. Then you're welcome to represent like UK kind of unofficially. But you know, I was like looking at a few things, and it's something that could potentially be growing into a very exciting part of natty bodybuilding. Because obviously, I know several episodes ago we talked about like Two Bros and the NPC Naturals, and I think that's probably something that they're wanting to do, like offer big stages, you know, big shows, maybe decent prize money, but the caveat then being the natural status of it was quite questionable. And look, I know there's a few people in this country and around the world who are not as big a fans of WMBF, which is fine. Like I say, we're not being biased towards them. We're just discussing a natty scene, and obviously this is a big thing within it. And one of them, and it links into a question Dino actually sent in, was about prize money versus using that money to fund a better production for the athlete and a better stage experience and show experience. And for me, I'd straight away say, well, surely, you know, you can do both, depending obviously on how well supported the shows are. And as these shows grow, like this, I think was the second or maybe third WMBF Malaysia. I think it might be the second. It could be the first one actually. But like it looked a really big stage production. They've got guest posers over like Dirk Emmerich, the current world champion. came over to guest pose, and Dino actually got to pose with him in the pose down, which is quite a nice moment. Because I know Dirk is he's not like a big famous celebrity, but to people like us, we look up to him, even though he's younger than us, because he's achieved so much and he's such a great athlete. So it would have been cool for Dean, and he did say he was fanboying, like to have a pose down with him. Because you can still say like, oh yeah, I stood on stage with Dirk. Yeah, he was guest posing, but it doesn't matter. And this is the kind of thing you see in the NPC, but you don't obviously in natural federations as much. But little things like that, they flew, like I said, Steph over and a lot of other European affiliation presidents over to judge, and they made a really, really good production of it. Now, they don't have a pro show in that lineup, but that might come in future years. And as Dean says, like, would you rather have good prize money or like a better state like show experience for all the people involved, and use the money you would give to prizes? Now, like I said, we see with the Evo Classic and the AMBF in Germany and Austria, those two shows have huge production value and really good prize money because they're very well supported. There's probably 300-400 athletes at both shows, and the AMBF had over 1,000 people in the audience. So 1,000 people times what, 20 euros, 30 euros for a ticket, you can see how they make their money. So, as I say, the show needs to be supported first. If you're just doing the first show and 25 people enter, you can't really then spend thousands on great show production and then good prize money, of course. But as the show grows, and the WNBF UK are wanting to do this year with the first ever pro divisions. I think they've got, we went over it in episode 1 or 2, and I think they've got bodybuilding, fit body, and I think they're going to do men's physique. I think. So we've gone 3 pro divisions. So this year's WNBF UK will be the first one where stage production's always been there. The show experience is pretty good. But now they're going to have pros prize money. Be interesting to see what that prize money is. And it's something that's really interesting. And WNBF for the last 12 months, even in that short space of time, has really blown up in terms of they've got dozens and dozens of more countries who are becoming affiliate nations, and some of them are going to take time to build up. So some of them have announced like shows that are going to be in the next year, the next 2 years, because right now, we haven't got a culture of natty bodybuilding, or in some countries they haven't got a culture of bodybuilding much at all. But over time, they're wanting all of these countries to have their own like national championships, and then everyone comes to the WNBF World at the end of the year as best they can. And then you're going to really see, rather than these conversations we always have of like, oh, it wouldn't be great to see him versus him, like, or her versus her. We're going to hopefully see them, all these athletes turn up to the WNBF World. So in terms of like that kind of thing, I think it's a really interesting prospect. And someone like Dean going over and having the ability to compete in Malaysia. I know he's got family over there, so it makes it a little bit easier in terms of logistics. But what an opportunity! Like, it's something we both said we want to do, and you get to see these amazing countries, different cultures that you wouldn't necessarily get, but you also get to compete and feel like, although we're distinctly amateur and we are just humble natties, like to feel like I'm a bodybuilder, like an actual proper one, as in like you look up to these IFBB pros who are competing at all these big shows, and obviously, we're not going to be like on their level, but I don't know, for us, maybe you feel like a bit of a sportsman after all in terms of that. So it's a really, really interesting time, and potentially, with the vision I imagine they've got in the next several years, this just could grow and grow and grow and grow, and every country could produce these super, super high level shows, more people doing them, better quality naturals coming through, the standard of the sport's just rising and rising. And with that can come prize money, with that can come sponsorship, with that can come prestige, and an elevation of the sport across the world. And then other federations by default will either fall by the wayside because they can't keep up, or think, you know what, I want to have that similar level too. So I think it's a really, really exciting time. So for you, Luke, what would your thoughts be on like what Dino's talking about in terms of like the money put into the show, or would you rather see a bit more money like as an athlete that you could potentially win?
Yeah, I think with that, it's a hard one. It's almost getting the balancing act right, really, because ultimately to get more prize money in, you need better production so that more athletes are actually coming. More athletes are coming, getting more sales of actually people like spectating, watching the show. It's just it's a fine balance between. But ultimately, like as a competitor myself, I would want to be at the show that has the best production there, like great stage lighting, so you can actually display your physique in the best light possible. And also like for the photos at the end of the day, because we're going through like some of us natural athletes going through preps of like 30 weeks. We want the photos to actually like represent and like display our physique the best way we can, and also the same when we're up on stage. So I'd say yes, the prize money is nice and something to obviously lean towards. But ultimately, like getting to the best show and putting that in there as well. But will like rewarding like athletes with prize money attract better athletes there? Like potentially, everyone's got like different kind of intrinsic like motivation. So I think it's getting a balancing act between both and seeing what draws in the best kind of caliber of athletes um, to the stage, and ultimately getting more spectators and more eyes on bodybuilding. So yeah, it's a tough one to say, like to nail it down to kind of like one. But I'd definitely say like a combination of both, really. But mainly, I'd say the spectators come from us as bodybuilders, because the majority of spectators are still bodybuilders, or in and around that circle anyway. So kind of improving their experience will only get them to actually come back and watch our spectators and see who's coming up, because a lot of us in the stands in the crowds are in our off season waiting to potentially do a show like that, but in a year or 2 years time, and seeing the good level of production there um, kind of attracts you to want to do that show itself. I think yes, it's cool getting that prize money on there when we can, but ultimately like being at one of the best shows, knowing like this, that like they've put everything in towards that show, and knowing like your money as a bodybuilder, as an athlete, is going into kind of improving the quality of your own experience there. Because yeah, like show day, it can be say a long day, but the actual time spent up on stage, you want to make sure that's kind of like um the best lighting and best experience possible, really. So yeah, it's a tough one to nail down exactly. But I'm sure as more of these shows and the likes of obviously the other WMBF affiliates are kind of like awarding more prize money, we will see in the years to come what this kind of like brings and what this which means for natural bodybuilding, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair with the prize money aspect, I'll go into kind of what I saw and what we've kind of seen, which is quite exciting. But even less than a decade ago when I first started, competing, obviously Damo, my coach, was a WNBF pro, and unfortunately, up until again, really recently, probably the last 2 years, a year maybe, there was nothing, there was no shows for him to do. There was usually, obviously, with WNBF Worlds, which you had to wait for. The UK sometimes did a pro show, obviously back when it was the UK FBA. But again, sometimes that pro show, there might be just 3 or 4 people or a couple, and then some years they didn't do one because there wasn't anyone to do the pro show. So it was very limited, and then the only one back then was the Swiss SMBF, so the Swiss pro show, which is still running, still very prestigious, probably the second best pro show in Europe. I think the Germany pro show has probably overtaken that, and that's only 2 or 3 years old now. But they were the only options really. So you were a pro athlete, you've reached the pinnacle, but then you couldn't kind of show yourself in terms of you were very limited to compete. And I don't know, the WNBF Pro League has a slightly awkward ruling about if you go and take professional status in another federation, particularly if it's assisted, they'll rescind your pro card, and they do demand loyalty a bit. So again, someone like Damo's level, like he could prep, but probably only doing 2 shows, maybe one. And again, that's relying on flying all the way to LA or flying to Seattle or flying to Boston or New York. It's quite expensive. And And, we know all what it's like, most people, yeah, as you experience, like to prep for one show isn't terrible. And, Dane was experienced enough now at that point where he could comfortably prep for a show and know he's at his best. But, when you just have that one show, anything can happen. Like I remember Stu McCulloch, bless him, like prepped all year for Worlds and on the flight over got food poisoning. And he shitting his guts up for 2 days prior to his show. And he still competed, he still placed, but it's one of them where he'll probably look and think, "Oh, what if I was at my best?" Because obviously he lost any water he was able to drink, like it was coming out of him. So, as I say now, the UK is going to have a pro show. We've got the Swiss show. We've got the German show. I think the Spanish show, I think this year is going to have a pro division. Obviously, male and female across all the divisions. It's not just bodybuilding we're talking about, but really interesting. Like, some of the prize money that's available, and I know obviously there's more money in some areas of the world, but like the WMBF UAE, United Arab Emirates, for most people that's Dubai. Well, it isn't just Dubai, but Dubai's within that. Their show is incredible prize money, like more than you'd expect to get for most IFBB shows. So the top prize for male bodybuilding is $5,000. Like, and this is just a bog standard pro show. I think it's in September, so we're trying to line it up that enough people would be around to do it. I know Dirk's doing it. Someone else who's pretty good. I can't think who, but I definitely remember reading like their caption. They were saying they're going to do that. So there's going to be some very good guys doing it, and someone like Dirk who is just a regular coach. $5,000 is I know some of these coaches and some you can earn really good money, of course, but $5,000 is not to be sniffed at for like a natty at all. That's incredible. Like I said, most classic physique pro shows in the IFBB are $2,000, $2,500. So to offer a prize money like that, and the more people, again, like Luke has said, the more people that then say, bloody hell, I might have to do that. So if next year 10 more, 15, 20 more WMBF pros go, fucking hell, you know what? It's September, so I could be ready early. With Worlds usually in early November, or have a bit of a diet break afterwards or whatever it is. But that show could be stacked. That show could have as many pros as Worlds, or if not more, because again, people will follow that money. Of course they will. It's not life changing, but it's probably it's more money. That $5,000 is probably more money than the entire PNBA Worlds offered across all their pro divisions put together for first, second, and third place. Like, Daniel won Worlds and he got €1,000, which great money, amazing. To say it is again just natural, but if that's your affiliation's Worlds and that's the top prize, it's not a lot of money and probably barely covers his tan and hotel for the weekend. So, $5,000 for that, and even the women's division was quite good prize money. I think all the top first places were between $1,500 and $2,000 upwards. I think they've got bodybuilding, bikini, or bikini or figure. I think it's bikini and physique, men's physique. At that WMBF UAE, and then WMBF Belgium, for example, are offering €1,000 to the overall winner of the because they haven't got a pro division, but they're going to give a monetary bonus to the overall winner as well as a pro card. So again, humble amateur natty can go to this WMBF Belgium, and if you're good enough, come away with $1,000, and you think, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, I've just got my pro card and I've already got more pro money than some of these pro legends in our country who've been competing for decades probably ever accumulated in all their lives. So, I know some of those old school guys are probably thinking, fucking hell, like, we never had it this good. But the shows are going to get better. The sport is going to get better because of this. And yes, not every affiliate is going to have the capability to offer 10 grand in prize money total, of course. Like, Dubai has a lot of money within that place, and the people who are running it are probably obviously quite wealthy or have wealthy backers and sponsors. But if this happens more often, the sport's going to grow, which then means the prize money grows. It just has to. If more and more people are doing it, if every national affiliate has a show where 300 plus people are doing it as a minimum, 300 entry fees, it's 300, memberships paid for. Like, that is going to go back into the show. and the production's just going to get better. And like you say, every year that's going to if every year that attracts another 10% of the total who did the show, next year that's another 30 to 50 people coming in, and then the following year it could be another 50 to 60. Before you know it, you get in these huge shows. And if you look at the calendar, particularly in Europe, you could probably do one most weekends from like August to Worlds, pretty much. So again, the opportunity, if you kind of want to go down the old, like we see into the NPC with like the pro card hunting, if you're good enough, you've got that opportunity. Like you could do Spain, you could do Portugal a couple of weeks later, then you could do France, then you could do Belgium, then you could do Holland. Most of the countries within Europe have these shows on, and as I say, providing you've got the permission to do so from WMBF UK, like you could go on a bit of a road trip. I know Loic, a good friend of the podcast, did it last year, and he loved it. He absolutely loved doing the Swiss show. So I think it's just great. It's one of those where even a couple of years ago, to compete abroad, you had to really win a British title to do so, and now you can be like, yeah, I'm going on a bit of a European trip, and I'm going to do 2 or 3 shows in 2 or 3 different countries. Obviously, you've got to fund it yourself, so it's not cheap. But if you've got a means and a want to and the ability to, it could be a really exciting time. And for someone like me, it's something that I definitely want to look into at least for my 2026 season. Potential, obviously, things have to line up, but yeah, in terms of like the opportunity, it's really incredible. And so, in terms of like the prize money aspect of things, Luke, and everything, what's kind of your looking insight into that?
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much agree with what you've said there, to be honest, Finn. Definitely the more that is there. And some of these shows, obviously, the route from the WMBF anyway is looked up at like, oh yeah, it's the route towards Worlds without even having that prize money available there. But then through for an amateur, the quality of people and the quality of athletes you're going to get towards that show, if I'm say to win to win the overall and to win your pro card, but also then taking thousand euros. It's like, yeah, of course I'm going to give that a shot. So it is definitely tempting. Then we do have obviously on the other side, especially in the UK route, we don't have say prize money given from say the likes of the UK DFBA on that side, but I know they put a lot of their funding into funding you to actually travel overseas when they are going towards Wales and stuff, which is great. But you obviously have to then be at that standard to actually qualify and be good enough towards going to Wales, or going towards European shows. So this does offer another route for someone who's maybe not quite at that standard, but they still want to experience competing overseas, seeing what that's like. And some of these shows, and especially because they put the prize money on it, it will cover some people, many athletes' trips over there as well, which is good. You can look at it from both sides and thinking, oh, you might have someone like Dirk, if he was saying the amateur scene and he's flying over all the European shows and kind of like, and you're like, oh God, I'm coming second. Dirk's flying about here, like cleaning up. But at the end of the day, you want to be up against the best. So it's definitely a positive on that side of things. And I think for natural bodybuilding as a whole, it's definitely a benefit to obviously have this prize money available to also like show that you can actually make money from the sport of it, without going down the assisted route. You don't have to go down that route if you want to kind of like say actually look at it and make a career of it. Yes, it's unlikely you're going to make a career from just competing alone within natural bodybuilding. And that's probably the same for even assisted bodybuilders, unless you're the top 10 in the world. But there is a route there to actually make money from that and grow the sport and be seen as more of an athlete. Because if you're making money from competing, then you can definitely kind of like put more effort and focus in towards that. Obviously, it's definitely like passion driven, but then seeing like a financial gain from it will also allow others from the outside who are not within the bodybuilding circle to actually understand the importance of that as well. So yeah, I definitely think it's interesting to see, and I guess we'll see how things go in the upcoming years. And like you've mentioned there, it's like it's interesting to think like, oh, what are the future plans for like next year's? How would you look at potentially like competing overseas, and like even if you're aligning that with a holiday with the missus or whatever, or you're going to do like a couple of like close by European shows, like why not give it a shot and see where you kind of like where you end up at the end of the day. I know we've also had um in 2023 now. I've forgotten his name's slipped. Did the WMBF Ireland, won the overall then. What's he called?
Charlie.
Charlie. Yeah, so won the overall through there. Not sure what I have to say after winning the overall there, and no pro card through on that. But yeah, we'll not mention anything further through on that. But it's another route to like to be had, and we kind of like know that WMBF Worlds is the pinnacle. So like being there, whether you're in the amateur ranks or for in the pro ranks, getting an invite there from winning one of these other European shows, it's like, yeah, why not? And then if you've got then a route to actually going over to LA or Seattle, wherever like WMBF Worlds will be that year, like why not? You've got your reason to do that then. So yeah, prize money there, and if you can have that prize money then paying for your other future shows, that would be a huge benefit, like for myself, and I'm sure like as many other athletes, like if you can actually fund your other shows, and if financially that's the only reason that you're not doing further shows, then this can be a great incentive to ensure that we have the best athletes at some of these shows, because that's what we want at the end of the day, and that's what's going to continue to grow the sport, having the best up against the best. And I find that with having so many federations, and something we've mentioned, and many athletes have kind of like mentioned over competing over the years, is like you don't really have a chance to actually see the best against the best. It's particularly within the UK, but some people are going to be in the off season, some people are going to be competing, but then they'll have a little bit of a season clash, or like if you go down one route with one federation, you're probably not going to align with the other. But if we could have kind of them all coming together with tied in with this specific prize money, then it's going to be much better for bodybuilders and also for fans of the sport as well.
Yeah, and this is it. Like the awkward thing is always like, is everyone prepping the same year? And more often than not, it isn't. Like, Dave Kay's not prepping this year. Sam Watt hasn't competed for many years, and he's still regarded as one of the best in the UK. So it's one of those. It's like most people are kind of spread out in terms of when they do it. But if a show obviously announced ahead of time, a year ahead of time, and said, okay, our pro show next year, we're going to be giving, $5,000 or more to first prize. A lot of these pros in the UK might go, okay, I wasn't planning on doing next year, but that's a big enough bit of bait for me to do it. And then before you know it, we can then see that super show of, all the best pros in the UK and Europe coming together. And then you can have the definitive answer of, okay, on that day, Benjamin Schuster won, or on that day, Nate Williams won, or on that day, Dave Kay won, or on that day, Keefe won, or Ben Lutt, or whoever, Ben Howard, Mitch, whoever it is. We can say then, yeah, okay, he can claim that he's the best of the bunch because he won this big show. So this is the thing, it's going to take a bit more time to build up that momentum, but when it does, potentially we can answer these questions of seeing all the best come together because it's worth their time. Now, I don't know if the WMBF are the same, so anyone who's a WMBF pro could let me know. But obviously I know within the IFBB, you do get your expenses paid for at a pro show, I think. So you get like your hotel and entry fee. You can claim that back. You do at the Olympia for sure. I think providing your place in the top 15. But I think for like a normal pro show, I might be wrong. So, but most of the time, you can claim, they'll cover that because obviously if they're wanting people to do it, or as I know with my good friends Nathan Phoebe, who were sponsored by trained by JP Nutrition, they get their expenses to pro shows covered within their sponsorship, because obviously, the sponsors want them to compete, do well, and represent their brand. And obviously, not everyone's going to have a really good sponsorship like they do. Like, they've got one of the best, and that's a really supportive one, because, like you say, they're covering probably a few grand for an IFBB pro show. But I don't know if WMBF World does that for pros. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe not. But again, if that comes to a point where they could do that, then, like Luke was saying, yeah, you win some prize money that can fund going to another 1 or 2 or 3 more pro shows. But if they get to a point where they can say, okay, pro athletes, again, giving you a bit more of the prestige for getting a pro card. Because again, what's the carrot? Why are people chasing down the pro card? You want to offer something more than just to be able to put it in your bio. Like, and if you can say, okay, if you win this pro card, not only are you joining this elite list, you get to go against the best in the world. And now we're offering competitive prize money. Now we're offering the chance that, okay, if you come to do WMBF Norway, we'll pay for your accommodation, we'll pay for your entry fee, we'll give it you back, essentially, as a pro athlete, because we want you to come and do it. Rather than saying to a pro who lives in Spain, you've got to spend £3,000 for flights, accommodation, and your tan and everything like that, and your food for 3 days, and there's a €500 prize at the end of it. Like, people are just going to be like, well, it's nothing. It probably won't. It's not going to cover my, day. Never mind the weekend trip or however long you go for. So, again, as this grows, the money can go back in. Obviously, we're trusting that the affiliate presidents are all honest and have the heart to do that. And we know when there comes money, any amount of money, people change, people become different, their morals can change, and then obviously some money might be used for nefarious reasons, or people then can say, well, you know what, I'm president of the WMBF or wherever, I'd like to see some of that money in my pocket because I've worked hard to put this show on. And okay, maybe, but the sport doesn't grow for those people. So yeah, I think in terms of, like, if you could get to a point where you earn the right, get some really good money, and you think, oh, sound like WMBF Portugal is in 3 weeks. Flights are pretty cheap. I can get a decent Airbnb with the money I've just won. Right, let's go and see if I can't win another grand, another couple of £100. And yeah, okay, no one's going to make it an annual salary, but in the best case scenario, if you're someone like Dirk or Benjamin or Mitch or someone of the high level where you can really say, I back myself to win most pro shows I enter. Like, I mean, I think I worked it out last year. Benjamin Schuster from Germany, he's 21. I think over all the shows he did last year, he won over 8 grand as a pro. Like, that's pretty good. Like, that's a house deposit. Like, it's nothing to be sniffed at. And this is, I don't know the prize money for doing MBF Worlds happened out. I'm yet to know that. I couldn't guess. It's certainly, I don't think it'll be as much as what people think, unfortunately. But again, as we're seeing in the IFBB, if WMBF Dubai, let's just call it, WMBF UAE, if they're offering 5 grand for a bodybuilding winner, what's to stop in a couple of years' time blokes going, well, WMBF Worlds only offer 1,500. I'm just going to do Dubai instead and save the ticket and the visa issues having to go to America, like, and the long travel. And before you know it, that takes over. And the IFBB, we're seeing it with the Dubai Pro in a couple of weeks' time. It's $100,000 for the top prize. So a lot of top pros are like, I'm going to go for that because I've no chance of winning it, because I think third place at the Olympia gets that. But then if you're below that, it's very little money comparative to like what you put in. So a lot of people are then going to do, this Dubai Pro show. Could be the same thing. So WMBF Worlds then might have a decision to make. Do we start offering more money? Yeah, that means less money we can take out, or whatever that might be. But if we're backing ourselves, then we might see, you might see someone like a Brian DeCosta who could win overall as a pro and come away with $10,000 or even more. Like, and then that's when people are going to start taking notice, because that's like, I could walk away with 10 to 20 grand from being a natty pro bodybuilder. Like, that's pretty incredible money. Like, then we start talking about that can really, start changing someone's life a little bit. So that would obviously rely on, is it Bob and Tina who run the WNBF, like their decision making in terms of what do we want to do? If they're happy for like the UAE to offer more money to pros and run the risk that some pros would go, Worlds just isn't worth it. Yes, the prestige of the trophy is, but as we know, like, yeah, probably bad example, but like the Arnold offers a lot of money to the pro winner, of course, but everyone can say who's won the Arnold, and it's like a very prestigious show, and the money's there. But then, if the same money was at the, I don't know, let's say the Alicante show, would it be one of those where who would remember that? Everyone remembers the Arnold winner, so maybe they'd say, look, the WNBF World, it's about the prestige of winning it. You say I've won a WNBF World title, like not many people have done that, and then your name ranks amongst the elite. But we know that people will eventually follow the money. So this would be an interesting, issue in terms of people within the WNBF stateside thinking, okay, well, do we have to up our game now? So I'd like that headache to happen for them, because that means the sport in Europe, in Asia, and even in Africa is growing. And if more people are doing it, there is more opportunity to, at least have an opportunity to earn some decent money. And obviously, we're not just saying this is all about money. Obviously, we all do it because we do love the sport and we love the journey, and it's just about self-improvement at the end of the day. But the more it grows, it's surely better for everybody involved.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with that, to be fair. And like, yeah, as you pointed out there, it's like we're not coming on here to say, oh, as natural bodybuilders, like, oh, we expect money to be at shows, we expect more prize money, because that's not the case at all. Because we wouldn't do this otherwise. Because obviously it's a love of the sport and the love for training for the vast majority of us anyway. Not for the glam, the clout of the gram. But would it grow the sport, and just, yeah, improve the actual quality of athletes coming to it, improve the actual the show day experience for spectators as well, just get more eyes on the sport, because that's what we want at the end of the day. But yeah, it is an interesting topic to go over. And I'm sure with this one we'll get into some. Have we got any further questions to actually go around the similar topic, or we're going away from the WNBF for now, Finn?
I don't think there was any more within that. I'll just double check the ones that I got on my page. I don't think. No, there weren't any more within this topic. Obviously, there were other ones that we can get to at the end of the show. Just general question, which is like, again, the question box is there for that. So there's none within that. But again, from my perspective, what we'd kind of what I'd like to kind of see and go on about a little bit is where what I hinted at in the last little bit I was talking about, like the idea of this pro card and this membership almost of like an elite club. Like we do want that eventually to mean something, because as we've seen in every federation, there's pro cards galore. I'm not digging these out at all, but like Fitex offers a pro card now, and they gave out some last weekend. And it's just a Fitex pro card. It's no affiliation with anything. And yes, they might say you can do a Fitex pro show at the end of the year, and maybe at British finals there might be a pro division and there might be some money or prizes. But what does that mean? What being a Fitex pro? And before you know it, is like you say, there's NFM UK pro, UK UP pro. Like it's just. Before you know it, someone's saying in your gym, "Oh yeah, I'm a pro bodybuilder," and you're like, "Oh, are you like And then yes, they have a pro card. I wouldn't consider myself a pro bodybuilder. Like if I had a a UK UP pro card, like no shade of them, I just wouldn't say I'm a pro bodybuilder. I'd feel embarrassed if I was sharing a gym with Nate Styles and I was like, oh yeah, me and you two pro bodybuilders. He'd be like, shut the fuck up, you little gim. Like he just would. Like, and because he's worked so hard to get to where he is at. Like so, I think it'll be a WNBF pro card. PMBA Pro card, a DFAT Pro card, like the three big ones with like you can win as a UK athlete. Realistically, like you want it to mean a bit more in terms of okay, what does this give me access to? Because we only offer one a year or a couple of years if you then compete abroad after winning your British title, and if you didn't win the overall at the British, you might go to Worlds or Europeans, and if you win your class there, you might get one. So, there's only realistically across each class, maybe one or two people are going to get one. So you're talking half a dozen to a dozen people a year are entering the pro ranks now. That's what I mean. What does that now mean? Yes, it's a prestigious thing and you can put it on your bio and that might get you some extra clientele if you're a coach, or it might get you some extra eyes on your profile. But eventually the federations are going to have to say, right, we need, this has to we have to offer something different, more than just a card. And top tier prize money, really, really good, pro show experiences, putting on a proper show with a live stream, so people can watch it at home and more people can then watch it and learn about the sport and see it. Like we saw with the AMBF, put it in a big arena, like 1,000+ people in the audience. I'm not saying you have to have a drone flying around the arena like they did, but okay, if it did look pretty cool, to be fair. Like, build some hype around it. Use social media. Like, again, that's what the WMF does quite well. And I know the MBW have been doing it with the UKFBA, which looks really, really good. Is like build a bit of hype with it. So put who's coming. Like, okay, we've got this pro show. A bit like bodybuilders are outboarders, I suppose. Like, here's the six guys are doing this men's physique pro show in Dubai. Like, who are they? Like, get people hyped around it, because then more people are going to watch the live stream. More people are going to follow those athletes. This is what I mean. So, what can we offer rather than just, oh, okay, you're a pro now. You can do one pro show a year. Great, and that's it. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, what more can we offer? It's got to be an elite club, because you pay a membership fee every year to renew your professional status, as far as what I'm led to believe anyway. So, like, whatever that might be, if it's 50, 70 quid for the year, like, what does that get me? What does that get me access to? Even in my off season, does this get me, I don't know, can I don't know, go to get like a front row seat if I go to an international affiliate event because I'm a professional? I'm not saying these people are above us, and we're just little peasants, but I'm saying, like, what does it get you? And if you offer something more than just 4 letters or 3 letters you can put on your profile on Instagram, more people are going to chase it down. More people are, then the standard improves. So you've then increased the standard of the pro ranks by default, and increase the amateur ranks by default, because more people are chasing it down. And maybe, just maybe, a couple of younger lads or lasses who might go, you know what, I think I might just go with the assisted route. They might stay. They might stay within the sport. And, we're both passionate about the natural side of things. Like, it's only going to be better if younger people are making that decision. Because right now, all these young lads go and lasses go assisted because the prestige is there. If over the next 5, 10, 20 years, we can offer a smaller percentage, but still prestigious, more people are going to stay, which means more people are choosing a healthier route ultimately. So that's kind of what it's like a self question in terms of what does the pro status actually mean. So what would your thoughts be on?
Yeah, so I'd say an interesting one is especially from last year, 2023, is like particularly like DFAC. So at the pro ranks, pro level, they're accepting pretty much any pro cards, or whether you're a WNBF pro, whether you're a PNBA pro. So what we got to see at the DFAC Pro Show is like a great standard of athletes there. Now I'm not saying this would be kind of like resolve all situations if they're all entries kind of like meet at one, and then you could all do their like pinnacle pro show at the end. But at least having some route so you could be actually up against the best. Because as a spectator, that's definitely what everyone wants to see. And also like being at a pro level, and especially being up there and thinking whether you're a PNBA pro, a DFAT pro, or a WNBF pro, if you've won a pro show before, you want to get tested and be up there against pros in other federations and think like, right, okay, like let's see how good of a pro I am. Because there's only a select few. There's not everyone gets to kind of like get towards that level. So you want to kind of like have your name down as one of the best pros, or if not the best pro, or seeing where you fall against one of the best, up against these legends. Because some of us might be chasing this for 10 plus years, and finally get to be up on stage with one of our kind of like someone we've looked up to. You want to be able to do that, but then if you've got your pro card, say in another federation or another route, you may not get access towards that. So I think some way of not saying all kind of pro cards are equal, but like having some route to kind of like get towards that. You've got to kind of almost like what UKBFF did back in the day. So one pro card, and you've got to win that, and then everyone coming around. And I'm not saying that when there's multiple federations, they're not going to like just come down and condense into one. As much as like from a fan point of view, we'd all want that. But yeah, financially, it's not going to work out. And like I know certain federations do it for different reasons and stuff. Some kind of almost like non-profit, some as like a business. You've got to have money, income coming in at the end of the day. But yeah, having something there that means more, because we'll see people who get like an NFM pro card and stuff, and there'll be some who will put it in, say like a pro bodybuilder. Some who will just not mention it because they know it's like they want more than that, or they don't actually value that too much. No, kind of like nothing to say against like NFM, just one federation that came to me through there. But yeah, like having something more to be had. So even as like a sponsorship deal or something like that, whether it's a sponsorship deal for like a year through from one of the sponsors, having something where they will actually utilize, but also it'll be good for the sponsor, because having someone who's won the show, who's won the overall or won the British final, run a pro show or something like that, then being sponsored, it's only going to bring more kind of like eyes on the actual the brand itself, but also it's going to actually help the athlete out massively in preparation for next future pro shows, and so on from there. So like having a collaboration like that, I think that would be something great, but that's going to come particularly from sponsor side of things, so not particularly from show promoters. But yeah, I think some federations need to kind of like understand it's like, yes, we want to do why are people going towards that federation? Is it for the pro status and stuff? And it's like it may be because of that, but it's because of the actual standard that's there. How many other people have had to like beat towards actually getting that pro status? And it's not actually having the pro status, it's being one of the the best amateur on the day to actually be awarded the pro card. I think that's the main difference, really. Like, are you there for the status of the pro card, or is it to be the best athlete on the day, like beating all the other amateurs? But yeah, it's a tough one to be said with pro cards. I know it is it's a glamour it's hyped up as a glamorous thing now, but we've mentioned before, like, would we rather have multiple British title wins rather than like being a pro? And we both kind of agreed to say yes, would much rather come back like year after year and rack up like 3 or 4 like British titles. That like you'd much rather be known than that, than obviously getting your pro card and potentially never placing in the pro lineup. So it's what you value more, really. But ultimately, having something which means more than the pro status would be there. And for some, that's why they may like turn that pro status down, is they would rather win the British title a number of times. So we need that, like a bigger incentive there to be had on that side of things. I'm not saying I know the answer to that, but there needs to be something more there to be had. So there's greater incentive there for sure.
Yeah, and again, if that incentive changed, we might then change our answer. Like we said, we both said we'd rather have one or two or three British titles to our name. But again, if the pro status that you might win on your first British title then offered you these incentives that okay, the next time you compete in 2 years or 3 years time, there's going to be half a dozen very high standard pro shows that you only have to fund a small percentage, so you can then do these places in several countries. That then might make me someone like me and you who shares that value. Okay, well, maybe I'll change our answer then, because then we're less likely to place everything. But in terms of the experience of what this little, basically just training in a gym 4 or 5 times a week, has now made it available that we can experience a lot of great life experiences. Never mind just doing a show. Like it's like you say, the travel and the culture you get introduced to and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. And I think it would be nice to see like a condensation of pro affiliates, and it was great for DFAC to offer that. They did it at Europeans. So obviously anyone could do it, and they're doing it again this year in the AMBF. The big Austrian show. I know they're a DFAC affiliate anyway, but that's for their pro show. That's what they did, because that's why Dirk and Benjamin and Fabian as well, the top three. That's why they ended up doing it, because they had a pro card in another affiliate. But they said, you know what, we'd rather have a really good pro show than a lesser show of just their pros, so to speak. Or you can be Ben Lloyd and be that good you've won pro cards in 3 federations. Yeah. It's your choice. Not everyone's Ben Lloyd, who is also competing this year, and it'd be interesting to see. I do believe, I'm sure from what I was reading on his, like when he talked about it, I think he's intended on potentially doing most of the federations as a pro in. Well, last time he did the Olympia and the BMBF Worlds in 2022. I'm sure it was 2022. Yeah, it was, because he did BMBF finals and I was there. So he did the DFAC Grand Prix at the BMBF finals. He did the Natty Olympia as a pro, and then he did the BMBF Worlds as a pro. I think he was the only one who did. He definitely was the only British person who did all 3. He might be the only person who did all 3. And again, credit to him. He's won his pro card legitimately in all 3 federations. Why not? Like, not everyone's Ben Lloyd, of course. Like, he's a freak. He's amazing.
Also,
but, he's kind of showing.
Yeah, he's also I bumped into him at the UK, the MBW Classic. He could do masters. He's like, nah, I want to be.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, fair enough. And funny enough, as you say that, I saw his update earlier. Earlier this, or it might have been early this afternoon, and shot me. No cardio, 4K steps a day. Like, yeah, you're just born to bodybuild. Like, fair.
Yeah.
A lot of graft put in.
Yeah.
Absolute freak of nature, Ben Lloyd.
Absolutely. It's fair. I might have to drop a message. Might have to get him on and ask him and get on, like, okay, let's talk through the life of a guy who's pro in all these affiliates, and it could be a good episode of that, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love to come on as well. We'll have to get that in the pipeline for sure.
So yeah, I think finish with we've got a couple of questions. They're not really direct. Well, they're not directly related at all. They're not even remotely related. But again, it's always good to get these questions, because we want people to interact, we want people to watch the shows, and the sport has been really decent. The last couple of episodes have been, lots of people watching, things like that. So we want to get more guests on as the season goes on. People who are winning shows and doing really well in multiple shows, are wanting to get people on. So, a lot of people enjoyed the episode with Jacob last week, so we're looking to get more guests on. But a big favourite of the show, Freddie, who I work with, Freddie Ellis, loves it, sends a question every week. Not related to the topic, but he's just talking about cues for squatting and the best one. So, seeing as Luke by far is stronger than me at squatting, I'm gonna let him take this.
Cues for squatting depends if it's a free bar or not. Because funny enough, as you we go into that, I free bar squat at the start of the month, I think, a couple of weeks ago. My stability was just not there. I was just not used to having to actually stabilize myself. But I think the biggest cue from any kind of like a form of a squat pattern and something I've kind of like brushed onto to like clients and stuff is like initially starting with knees going over your toes. So allowing your knees to travel over your toes, but also like controlling the start of that movement as slow as possible. If you're quick from that initial knee bend, you're only going to be like fighting against that against gravity coming down into the bottom. But if you can be as slow and controlled as possible from the start, you're going to maintain control all the way through and maintain the stimulus on your quads as you're coming down. And then I think almost knees over your toes and bum far down in towards the bottom, and then like pressing away from midfoot to heel. It's going to slightly differ, depends on height, what you're using, whether it's like using a hat squat, whether you're using a pendulum, brace position and stuff, like feet and stuff, what feels comfortable. But I think the main thing where a lot of people kind of don't get as much out of a squat pattern than others is due to tempo. And there's a big difference with taking a 6 rep set on a hat squat, which lasts close to a minute long, and a 10 rep set, which lasts 30 to 40 seconds long. It's like, what are you going to get more stimulus out? Like, it depends on paper, whether you're just trying to fight the log, like beat the logbook, or you're actually trying to get as much out of that set as possible. And if a squat pattern is something you're not particularly too good at, or you don't get a great stimulus out of it, I would definitely I definitely recommend pause squats, spending time in the hole, actually controlling coming out of that bottom position. But from a cue standpoint, yeah, like slowly pushing your knees over your toes as slow as you can, bum all the way down in towards the bottom. And then, yeah, powerful push out of the bottom out of the hole effectively. What would you say?
What Luke do you?
Yeah, carry on.
I was going to say, Luke, just to follow up, because he kind of asked about that within the question. What would you like to see from like a brace and a breathing point of view?
So yeah, I'd actually, so another thing as well, where a lot of people kind of get wrong is they'll come to the bottom of, top of the squat, they'll brace from the start. Whereas then when they get down into the bottom, get down into the hole, they've almost lost the brace. Or you've got the other way, you've got the opposite where they've come that quick down into the bottom because they want to maintain the brace. So I'd actually just breathe normally until you're about halfway down the rep, and then I'd almost get your brace then nice and tight into the bottom and then look to come out. You want to work through this as you're going through like your warm-up sets though, because if you do it too late, you could almost have no brace when you come down into the bottom. And that's when you might see people just basically not push up and just basically fail the rep. But yeah, I'd almost say, let's say if I'm coming down the rep here, so like from bottom, I'd almost start to like brace here, and then I'd be pushing away out of the bottom of there. And I find that since working with AJ, my squat, the overall stimulus I got on my quads was much better from it. Bracing and like breathing is one thing that can either massively like hold you back, or it can allow you to excel massively. But I find those that brace too early, they just lose their power output when they come down into the bottom. Because if you're going 3 to 4 seconds down to the bottom, you're not going to be able to hold all your air in by the time you've got to the bottom. So if you catch it like halfway down, then you're going to be powerful and you're going to actually utilize that as you start to push out of the bottom, basically. Might be slightly different on a free bar, however, I would say, give or take. Depends on the tempo, really.
Yeah, makes sense. And I know he probably doesn't listen, but I know you might cause a debate with Mr. Forburn, because I know he did a post about that not long ago saying that he prefers start at the top, brace all the way through and down, because he thinks, from a mechanical point of view, it stabilizes the hip more. But like I say, I'd say that's down to the person. If you've got someone who is, they're not bracing, they're holding the breath, because there's a massive difference between the two of those. If someone's holding the breath, then they're going to pile in. Like if they're doing good tempo eccentrics, if they're like holding the breath and like the eyes are bulging out, by the time they get to the bottom, they're going to be gasping for air, and then you let that all out, like before you've barely started coming back up, and you're going to drop 3, 4, 5 reps in performance, because that's going to feel like a ton of bricks coming on you.
Depends if you.
But that would probably be my biggest thing to add.
Yeah. I mean, it depends if you're doing like continuous reps or not. So, on obviously mentioning foreburn, like if fair enough, if you're wanting to nail that one rep, like brace at the start and then come down into the bottom and then you can push it out. But if you're wanting to maintain a continuous set, by the time you come to the top and then going straight back down, you want to be ensuring that you're breathing throughout. So actually utilizing that brace as you come down to the bottom. And it's not to say that I didn't do the other way before, because I definitely did. I was like, I'm amped up for this hack set. I'm going to brace from the start. Then I'll come back down. But what I noticed was I was resting a hell of a lot longer at the top, and I would get much less on my quads, but I'd feel more fatigued. I'd be like, oh, I feel absolutely done in here. But it wouldn't be in terms of my quads. I'd just be gassed because I've been holding my breath for that long. So counterbalance, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'd be my biggest thing in terms of adding time at the top. Like, just audit it. I know it gets said by loads of people, but 3 breaths maximum. If you're doing more than 3 breaths, either rack it or it's a rest pause and just accept it for what it is. So that's the biggest thing. But my input, you've nailed everything. I'd say in terms of my addition would be there's just a big difference between bracing and holding your breath. And a good brace feels like you're holding your breath, but you're not. And there's a big difference between that. And obviously, utilising a belt, that's what most people wear a belt on a squat pattern for, is to actually brace with, rather than just use the belt as an arbitrary thing to just like, oh, I can do more weight with a belt. Like, the belt should cue your brace, essentially, because you feel the pressure of the belt against your like lower torso as you push the air and create that big vacuum, not vacuum, the opposite of vacuum, create that big stable stomach area if you're trying to be a logbook. And it can be tempting, if you feel there's one more there, to maybe have a little bit longer at the top. But again, it's what you're wanting out of training. If it's just to keep going +1 every single week, and that +1 progressively becomes 4 breaths, 5 breaths, 6 breaths, 7 breaths, 15 seconds at the top. Oh, I can get another one out. Then you're just doing a load of singles, aren't you? So I always try and go 3 breaths, and on the third, I'm going back down. Obviously, as the set goes on, the first however many reps, I can just do on the 1. But as you get a bit more fatigued, I might take 1 or 2 just quick, and then if I'm having to do 3 and I don't feel I can start the next rep on the third breath, but I still need another one. I think, as much as that might look like you've done a rep in reserve to people, if you film the set, because you might not have done necessarily a grinder, you might have to say, okay, for what I want, particularly if it's you're auditing your reps, you might have to rack it and say, okay, those extra reps will have to wait for another day, and then maybe actually look at the breathing. So how are you bracing, rather than if it's actually a strength issue? Because like you say, get your brace wrong and it's going to absolutely ruin your set, particularly if you're doing continuous. As Luke just said, if you're doing a continuous set, if you get your brace wrong, like, you might have got 40 in 1 week, the next week you come in on rep 7, you fuck your breathing up, you might get a scratchy 11, and then you think, oh, I've got weaker. You're not weaker. You got out of breath quicker, which on continuous is going to be the one. Which is why for me, recently I was doing continuous on hack. I've actually started to do it on belt, because belt for me, belt squat is it's a lot easier to do continuous because the weight isn't on you. You're not having to brace as much, really. You still want to obviously stabilize yourself, of course, but it's a lot easier to do continuous reps because it's similar like the leg press. You're not having to absolutely like hold this thing on your shoulders and support all the weight. I know you still have to brace, it's important for leg pressing as well, but I find that for me personally, I just still have ran into technical difficulties sometimes with continuous reps on a hack. And like you say, if you misgroove one of them, it can ruin your set, which then pisses you off. Like, and I know the hardcore group will say, well, that's a you problem, and it is. That's on me. Well, that's why I prefer to do mine like continuous on like a leg press or a belt squat, because less of that stability in terms of the breathing aspect of it is going to ruin my set. Like, you can just keep grinding out on a belt squat because the load is not going through your spine at all. So yeah, good question, Fred. Appreciate that, mate. Luke, have you got any?
Personal none for on that. I was gonna say one to add on that as well, which I didn't mention. I guess it would how your bracing would actually differ depending on your rep range you're actually going at as well. Because something I've kind of experienced with doing, say, a 15 to a 20 rep set, I wouldn't even brace for like the first half or the first 10 or so. I'd be able to almost keep it continuous and in that groove. But if I were to brace, I'd probably find myself more out of breath. Don't take it as if this is a must do. Like, if you can execute that without having to brace at a lighter weight and still get a great stimulus out of it, then keep going with that. But then you will come to a point where you'll just need to take a breath. So yeah, take it when you need it, basically. That's what I'd add on there. And then hamstrings to calves. If you've not got any calves like me, just hamstrings as low as you can. Yeah. Any other to follow on your end, Finn?
No, I mean, got another one from Ryan, who's the owner of my gym. But I think neither of us would be in a great position to talk about it. He asked about like what's thoughts on Ozempic. So it's the new, it's a drug that's been around for a while, but a lot of NHS, I think it's just been put into NHS where they're using it to combat obesity, and I believe it's an insulin regulator. If I'm completely wrong, then this is why I'm saying I'm not overly qualified to kind of talk about it. But I suppose it's less likely of interest in terms of your natural status. It's nothing to do with that. It's more in terms of this now is being used as a drug to combat obesity. So just quickly, because like I said, I don't think either was particularly qualified to speak with authority on it. In the job that it does, as far as I'm aware, I've got a sibling who has type 1 diabetes, so I kind of know about it. Like, yes, in terms of what the mechanics of what it does to help obesity, it quote unquote works. But again, it's culture, it's environment, it's psychology. Like, why do people overeat? If you've got someone who won't nail that, then they're either going to be on the Ozempic for life and just keep turning up every week and saying, I need more because I'm not changing. Or like you say, it's a similar thing to like almost like the antidepressant argument. Like, antidepressants are a very, very good, high quality drug for people who have depression, but you shouldn't be. And again, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole or get called out, but in my opinion, you shouldn't be on antidepressants for decades, because the antidepressants are supposed to be getting you an even keel to then be able to, potentially reverse engineer what's going on and get the therapy you need or other ways of treating it, rather than just papering over the crack of just taking a drug that's going to numb things down. So it's like Ozempic. If you're not working out as a person who's struggling with the weight as to why, then yeah, you're just going to end up taking it for the rest of your life. It is not going to be, it's not a cure. It doesn't make you lose weight. It's not a laxative. So yeah, as far as like I'm willing to kind of talk about that, like yeah, I think it's not a bad thing, but I do worry that it's going to be one of those with people will just go, oh, I'll take that, and I don't have to change anything else in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you there. I mean, I've also come from got a family member, same situation, well, type 2 diabetes. So kind of particularly literally environmental based. Um, and then when this is like come available, it kind of allows like a particular individual like that to think, right, okay, well, I can take this, I don't have to change X, Y, and Z, and I can drop from that, and I don't have any appetite anymore. But then you've also got the worry of like certain people then not having appetite and then not getting the correct like vitamins and minerals within the diet because they're just not hardly eating at all. Like, yes, body fat is dropping off, or like body weight, so to speak. Um, but it like, yes, they might feel better initially because they're seeing like scales coming down mentally. But then in terms of like what physical kind of like impact does that have? Where are kind of like health markers through on there and stuff. But yeah, I'm not particularly qualified to like go through that. It will have, it'll obviously, yes, it will have benefits. It's particular for those that have like high levels of obesity. But we need to kind of like look at why they have got to there in the first place. Because we all know it's going to be through an output, minimal output, and a lot of overeating. And that drug doesn't address either of those. It almost just seems as like an exit strategy to not resolve any of them two. Whereas anyone to improve their output, especially like if they're within like an obesity realm, increasing their output, they're only going to feel better from it. So yeah, that's kind of like my 2 pence in there, so to speak.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Yeah, no more on my end. So no more there. If you've not got anything, but we can finish this episode there.
Yeah, spot on. So yeah, as always, we appreciate you all for listening. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. And we will catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.